Thanks for joining us. I'm Megan Roberts. We begin tonight in Whitehorse, where charges have been laid in connection to a long-standing investigation. Last year, a house exploded in the Riverdale neighborhood. A neighbor, David Gould, was killed when his home was damaged. The homeowner was injured, and now he's been charged. Gabrielle Plonka has our top story tonight.
RCMP say this investigation was highly complex. Multiple agencies assisted from outside the territory. Police say that's why it took nearly a year to press charges. The explosion flattened a Riverdale house in November 2023. It was heard through the city, sent debris flying across the street, and killed a neighbor. The house's owner, Timothy Preston, was seriously injured. RCMP immediately opened a criminal investigation. Police announced today that Preston has been charged with 2 offenses. They're both under the Yukon Gas and Burning Devices Act. They include installing or altering a heating system without a permit, as well as using one without a permit and inspector approval. Each charge carries a maximum penalty of 6 months in jail, a $2,000 fine, or both. Preston is expected in court on January 7th. Gabrielle Plonka, CBC News, Whitehorse.
Police in Yellowknife have charged one man with a number of charges, including breaking and entering, resisting a peace officer, and failing to comply with release orders. It all stems from an incident on Saturday. That's when RCMP say Daniel Lenny fled when police tried to stop his vehicle for a document check. Police say they didn't follow him because they were worried about the safety of the public. Lenny was later found in the truck at the Chateau Nova Hotel, but took off again, this time along the Niven Trail. Police say he eventually abandoned the truck and fled, breaking into a nearby home. That's where he was found and arrested. He remains in custody tonight. There were people in the home when he broke in. They were not injured. Last night, hundreds of people across Nunavik paid their respects to the victim of a fatal police shooting. People held vigils across the region for Joshua Papigatuk. He was in an altercation with police officers in Saint-Louis last week. During the incident, an officer opened fire and killed Papigatuk. The Nunavik-wide event coincided with the 49th anniversary of the James Bay and Northern Quebec Agreement, a significant land claim agreement in Canada. The office responsible for overseeing family services in Nunavut is sounding the alarm. The territory's representative for children and youth says the department is struggling to meet basic obligations under the Child and Family Services Act. Carl Cardinal reports.
The Senate is doing a review to understand the vulnerabilities of young people who are currently in governmental care. Jane Bates is the representative for children and youth. She was invited to the Senate as witness amongst others. She says in most jurisdictions, a child will age out of government care at 19. But in Nunavut, there's discrepancy in the Family Services Act, and a child can be discharged at 16.
Here in Nunavut, there is a provision in the Act that permanent orders are granted until the age of 16, and the department has to then go back into court and extend them to age of majority, which is a significant concern. If their permanent order is not extended, then that period of time between 16 and 19, they essentially don't have a caregiver. They haven't been returned to someone, to their family, and they're out on their own, and they're also not eligible for services such as income support.
Bates says it can be very difficult for a child to age out of government care because of the lack of transition planning. She says it can be even more difficult for young people aging out of permanent care outside Nunavut.
So you have this young person who doesn't have a connection to trusted adults, to a family they can go back to. They have been separated from their community, so they've been removed from their community. They don't have a connection to the community. So they're essentially out on their own.
Bates says that these young people often experience trauma, child abuse, and neglect, and they are at higher risk of having emotional and psychological issues in adulthood. She says this is why, amongst other things, it is important to have a transition plan for youth that are aging out of the system.
Every child in the director's care should have a concrete comprehensive permanency plan. And the permanency plan can be, transitioning to adulthood. What does that look like? So when you turn 19, what is this going to look like? Where are you going to be living? So these conversations, these plans need to be completed well in advance of a 19th birthday, which requires planning. It requires case management. And I think that would help young people who are in these situations to be successful. And those are not being completed. Those are not being done.
Around 88 kids are currently placed outside the territory, and approximately 40% of them are under permanent care. Stephen Inulaluk grew up in the foster care system. He says he was sent out to Winnipeg with his brother for 3 weeks, but ended up being placed there for 14 years. Inulaluk says his little brother lost his language. He says it was difficult and felt left alone when he aged out of the system.
I wish they could have helped instead of just letting go right away. Like, they let me go right away. As soon as I got out of the system, they let me go. My name was wiped off and they were doing nothing. They just let me be.
Tomorrow will be the last part of our story on the Department of Family Services. We asked the department for a response and are hoping to get it on Thursday. Carl Cardinal, CBC News, Iqaluit.
Yellowknife City councillors appear poised to reprimand one of their own. At a committee meeting today, they addressed a report that concluded Councillor Kat McGurk breached council's code of conduct. The Integrity Commissioner recommended McGurk be censured for attempting to get the city to pay for a laptop she borrowed and lost. During last summer's wildfire evacuation, McGurk was using the laptop to organize volunteers who were supporting contractors building a fire break. Councillors who spoke about the ethics breach today say they believe the apology McGurk gave was sincere. However, most councillors, including Ben Hendrickson, say that's not enough.
I believe that public trust in our democratic institutions in Canada and globally is at the lowest I've ever seen in my lifetime. I therefore can't shake the belief that we need to use the very, very limited authority we have to show the public that we are collectively represent, that we understand the hurt and mistrust this incident caused them, and that we have taken this incident as seriously as we can.
McGurk says she's already paid for the laptop. The council has yet to decide what, if any, action will be taken against McGurk. It's unclear when they will make that decision. McGurk was emotional as she left council chambers today. The Yukon government has released an update on its climate change plans. Our Clean Future is supposed to help the Yukon slash emissions by the end of the decade. But there's a problem. Population growth means emissions are still climbing. Julian Green explains.
The amount of greenhouse gas each Yukoner emits every year is going down, but population growth is wiping out those gains. Over 12 years, population grew by 26%, and with that, emissions also grew by 6%.
Still, ministers and civil servants aren't worried. They say it's all going to plan.
This was always how we anticipated it would go. Like, even in the modeling, when we looked at the actions, the actions come in and then they have an effect over time. So the first place we're looking is to try and see that we're decoupling from GDP and population growth.
Where do those emissions come from? Mostly transportation, which accounts for more than half. Gas-powered cars and trucks still rule the road, and they make up almost a quarter of all emissions. Shane Andre, the director of the territory's energy branch, says there's no need to worry.
It's important to recognize that our emissions reporting is always on a 2-year lag. So really, the emissions you're seeing right now are 2022 emissions. So really, 2 years after the launch of OCF. So it's just important to recognize that we're early days in the implementation of this plan.
Andre says more electric vehicles are making a noticeable dent in emissions. So are retrofits and heat pumps in Yukon homes. Andre says larger drops to emissions are in the forecast, even with population increases that are all but guaranteed. Julian Green, CBC News, Whitehorse.
In Nunavut, there's new funding coming for community organizations to build more housing. The Nunavut Housing Corporation is looking for proposals to build transitional housing, shelters, and homes for elders. There will be up to $150,000 available per unit. That's through a forgivable loan with a minimum 10-year term. The corporation says most supportive housing units are currently in Iqaluit.
There's not a lot across the territory at large, and this is certainly something this program is trying to deal with. You know, we have targeted creating 300 new supportive housing units under our Nunavut 3000 strategic plan.
There's $7.5 million available each year for this program until 2030. Maine says the Housing Corporation will look to get more money if there's demand for it. Nunavut has detected its first case of avian influenza this year. The virus can affect a variety of birds. In this case, it was found in a glaucous gull near Resolute Bay last month. The Nunavut Department of Health says the risk of infection to the public is low, and there's no evidence the virus can be passed through fully cooked birds or eggs. Most cases of human infection, they say, are from prolonged contact with infected birds in contaminated environments. Symptoms of the virus in birds include showing nervousness, trembling, swelling, and diarrhea. Multiple dead birds in one location can also be a sign of the virus. The head of the Church of England has been forced to resign. Archbishop of Canterbury, Justin Welby, led the world's 85 million Anglicans, but a sex scandal involving a Canadian-born church volunteer has brought him down. Chris Brown reports.
Justin Welby crowned a new king, and as Archbishop of Canterbury, he presided over the immense influence of the Church of England in British life as well as Anglicans in Canada.
I'm John Smythe.
But it was his failure to repeatedly stop this man that forced his resignation. Smythe was a Canadian-born British lawyer and a morality crusader who ran church camps in the UK and Africa. Over 5 decades, he committed heinous physical and sexual abuse against more than 120 boys.
Basically caned me so many times that I thought I was going to die.
Smythe developed a Channel 4 documentary in 2017 revealed the extent and severity of Smythe's reign of terror and suggested a decades-long cover-up by church officials. An independent report released last week concluded it was at least partly Welby's fault Smythe was not stopped. That when he became Archbishop in 2013, there was enough evidence to take to police, but he did not.
I did not ensure that this was pursued as energetically, as remorselessly as it should have been.
Welby attempted damage control with an apology, but the pressure to quit grew.
I think that it's very hard for the church, as the nationally established church, to continue to have a moral voice in any way, shape or form in our nation when we cannot get our own house in order.
In 2022, Welby was in Canada to deliver an earlier apology for what he called the terrible crime of church-run residential schools.
Forgive me.
But this church critic says apologies without change are meaningless.
It's been sheer hypocrisy over the last few years, and I hope now somebody will sit back and look at this and say that we need to start afresh with how we deal with protecting the vulnerable in our church.
John Smythe died in 2018 without ever being brought to justice. In a statement on his resignation, Justin Welby said he felt shame at failing to safeguard the vulnerable. Chris Brown, CBC News, London.
Donations to the War Amps have a lasting impact on amputees. Today, your support gives them the artificial limbs and resources they need for everyday activities and learning to live with amputation. Having access to our essential programs helps amputees prepare for tomorrow on their road to independence. The War Amps is committed to improving the quality of life for Canadian amputees, but this wouldn't be possible without you. To learn how your donation helps, visit waramps.ca.
This is a proposed corridor for multiple pipeline projects.
You're crossing our territory on two ends of your pipeline. Who gave you permission?
Pipelines break of the pipelines would destroy the water and everything in it.
They got to come through us first.
This is an immediate evacuation order for all Coastal GasLink employees. I feel like we are at war. It's just all been building up to this point.
Yenta on The Passionate Eye. Watch free on CBC Gem.
Hi, I'm Michaela. I'm so happy to have these prosthetic legs. I wear them every day so I can do all the things I love to do. I like to hike, skate, and do gymnastics. Because of your donations, Lamps is able to give me these devices. When you donate, you help kids like me. Thank you.
If the car comes with the deal, I'm in.
Cheers, Dragons!
I look forward to fighting you on many a deal.
And we look forward to beating you.
Dragon's Den. Watch free on CBC Gem.
The question is,
and I'm just going to ask,
I want to ask you, but why is this such a big deal? What does the science say?
What was their reaction?
What are we talking about here?
Who told you?
So, to be clear, what is the actual story there?
I think we can explain.
Canada Post workers could be off the job as early as Friday. The union and the corporation have been bargaining over a new contract, but have yet to reach an agreement. Nisha Patel looks at what a strike or lockout could mean.
It's the busiest time of year for Canada Post leading up to the holidays, but postal workers are preparing to walk out.
We're fighting, for fair wages. We're also fighting for improved health and safety. We're fighting to retire with dignity.
After a year of negotiations, the two sides are still far apart. If they don't reach a deal, the union will be in a position to strike just after midnight on Friday.
Obviously, we'd prefer to get an agreement in the next 72 hours and put this behind us and try to build back our holiday volumes.
Wages are one sticking point. Canada Post has offered an 11.5% pay bump over 4 years. The union is pushing for 23%. Canada Post has also proposed expanding delivery to weekends, which the union has resisted. For now, the federal government won't step in.
We will make every effort possible to keep them at the table and keep them talking, and we hope to achieve a negotiated settlement there.
Canada Post said a strike would further strain its finances. The Crown Corporation has lost $3 billion since 2018. For small business owners like Don McCowan, the timing of it all couldn't be worse.
It is drastic. Well, 45% of our business goes out through Canada Post. So if all of a sudden we can't ship that 45%, you can't meet your overhead.
This is the time of year when he sees the biggest demand for his toy models. He says half of his revenues could disappear.
We have no backup for the simple reason that backup is very expensive. The courier companies charge a lot more.
During past labor disputes, the union has used rotating strikes to minimize disruptions. A full national strike is also on the table. That would shut down operations entirely. Nisha Patel, CBC News, Toronto.
A Yukon man is lucky to be alive tonight after a harrowing experience paragliding in India. Terry Reith brings us his incredible story of survival.
Ben Lewis was living his dream, paragliding in India.
We had lots of amazing flying around.
The Canadian had been in the air for nearly 5 hours when a storm appeared and his adventure took a violent turn.
Basically just, carrying me upwards at crazy speeds and, just up and up and up.
During a terrifying 23 minutes, he was pulled higher and higher, nearly 6,000 meters from the ground.
I was just sort of like in this spiral going up, and my head was hanging out, and all the blood was rushing to my brain, and that's probably what caused me to black out in the end.
He woke here, in the middle of the jungle. He had several broken ribs, a broken neck. He could barely see or hear, but he found his way to a place where he could get cell reception and texted his friends. "I'm in trouble," he wrote, dropping a pin of his location. A local family found him, took him in and warmed him until his friends arrived and moved him to safety. Lewis now knows that he was hit by something called cloud suck, a thermal updraft which is caused by rising columns of warm air.
Cloud suck poses probably the most dangerous to unpowered flying.
The head of Canada's paragliding organization says most flyers know to avoid them.
You get out of the way, you make the decision not to fly. That's the best decision.
Anyway, this place is a bit of a zoo with kids and dogs.
Lewis is now home in Watson Lake, Yukon, recovering from his injuries.
I mean, it's okay. It's all getting better. You know, there's still night times are hard, mornings are hard, everything hurts, but it's fine. It's a good lesson. It'll help me avoid storms in the future, I think.
He admits that he took risks he shouldn't have and promises to be more careful the next time he flies. Terry Reith, CBC News, Edmonton.
Yesterday was Remembrance Day, and people marked it across the country, including here in the north. In Yellowknife, there was a wreath-laying ceremony and a military parade. Over 100 people watched, from elders to children, all braving the cold to honor veterans.
Their dad and my husband is a part of the military now. So yeah, just showing them, and they've been going every year since they were little, just how important it is to be out here, show that we remember, and give our thanks to everything that we have now.
As Canadians paused to remember military veterans for their service, many vets are looking to their future once they leave the forces. And for some, that means a different kind of service. Arthur White-Crummey explains.
I still have a few things to do. I'm a little behind schedule, to be honest with you. No worries, man.
Dean Brackness has always been hungry for adventure. He sailed the high seas for the Royal Canadian Navy. Now retired, he's taking on a new challenge at Ottawa's esteemed Le Cordon Bleu Culinary School. It feels familiar.
The head chef, the commanding officer, and then he has, second commanding officers, and then all the troops or the sailors or the airmen underneath them doing what needs to get done. So it's just like, someone walking off the street from a brigade or a ship would instantly recognize the organization.
Brackness is one of 8 Canadian Armed Forces veterans now studying at Le Cordon Bleu. The classes can cost between $13,000 and $30,000. But Veterans Affairs will pick up the bill. Word is spreading, and the culinary school is seeing a steady stream of recruits. About 30 veterans have graduated so far. A handful more sign up for the introductory program every few months, like Paul Fuller.
I was always interested in cooking. I wanted to become a chef, but my mother dissuaded me. She said, do that as a hobby.
Fuller thrived on hierarchy and discipline. He joined the Cub Scouts, then the Cadets, and finally the Canadian Armed Forces. He served in Bosnia and Afghanistan and retired as a colonel after 32 years.
I saw the opportunity to further my passion and come to Le Cordon Bleu to do the culinary diploma. And my aim is after that to work part-time in an old age home to give back to the community.
He's now about a month into his basic training. He's made puff pastry, risotto, and just finished 3 days of fish. Sharma says veteran graduates have gone on to coveted positions. He says veterans seem to thrive in a high-pressure environment.
They kind of, relate to the ethos and the discipline that they have had in the services. They find a similar kind of an environment here in the kitchen where it's all about teamwork, discipline, precision, being on time.
Brackness says Navy cooks are fantastic, but he worked on the bridge, not in the galley. His recipe is like a battle plan. He tries to follow it to the last detail.
You have a mission, here's your tools, that you do it, boom, and this is what you're supposed to do. And you have someone standing over you with not clipboard, but criticizing you, So I'm in my 50s, I still get criticized for my performance. So
kind of like a drill sergeant?
Kind of, yeah, but nicer, a lot nicer.
Arthur White-Crummey, CBC News, Ottawa.
FIFA Football for Schools is kicking off its program in Canada, starting with Yellowknife. A number of teachers and coaches in the NWT are getting the time to brush up on the beautiful game, both on the field and in the classroom. Jocelyn Chappelle went to check it out.
2, 1, go! They'll be heading back to school soon with the new skills. Drills, passing, shooting, and a training app, to name a few. This teacher believes this workshop is time well spent.
Already from this morning, I'm really excited to take what I've learned and implement it into my sessions next week.
But it's very important that we as coaches.
Off the turf, teachers spent time in the classroom with FIFA program leads. The organization says this training emphasizes life skills and that coming to Yellowknife wasn't a random choice.
We think that starting with football for schools in the Northwest Territories will help really to promote and to create awareness that everybody deserves an opportunity to play football and to enjoy the games.
3, 2, 1, go!
The training program isn't just for teachers. On Thursday, students will get in on the fun too.
Yeah, they're very excited. The second that I dropped FIFA, they kind of all lost it. So yeah, they're very excited to come. They're very excited to learn and be able to participate in this program.
Okay, stop. Change position.
Before FIFA leaves, it'll be donating more than $60,000 to the NWT soccer programs, along with 2,000 soccer balls. Jocelyn Chappelle, CBC News, Yellowknife.
And that is Northbeat for tonight. For news anytime, go to cbc.ca/north. Thank you for watching. I'm Megan Roberts. Have a good night.
I know that I've been reckless, but it won't happen again. I love my daughter so much. I just need a chance to prove myself. Hello?
What'd you do?
I'm a thief.
Which insects are serially monogamous?
I'm just curious.
Can love help us live longer?
I feel alive!
Does heartbreak make music better?
I love this music.
Could AI compose the next masterpiece of our time?
Robot composers conducting robot music.
Do you really need to wait 30 minutes after eating before swimming? And why is something as big as time kept in something as small as a watch?
Oh, that's heavy.
When you get curious, you get CBC.
They're making more money than they have ever made in the history of the music business.
We have generation after generation of us not seeing a fair piece of the pie.
How do we keep the money from Black music in Black people's hands?
I think my dislike is warranted.
What was Amy calling it? The beef wars?
You don't tell me anything. You don't share your feelings, open up about your past.
It's not that simple, Amy.
They reported a shipment of cocaine stolen 2 weeks ago.
We all have our vices, Detective.
Oh, you find that surprising?
Dust, noise, and lowlifes.
Bloody hell.
Q with Tom Power. Available now on CBC Listen or wherever you get your podcasts.